Hi, this is Exorcist, a show where I take a look at some Gunpla and see how authentic they are. This time, we are looking at the EG-12144 RX-78-2 Gundam recirculation color. The recirculation color is a branch within the Ecopla lineup. Unlike the previous attempt, where Bandai just replaced the plastics with the Ecopla, this time they have the Ecopla replace the joints as well because this is EG. But at the same time, they kind of think about the overall aesthetic so that, it's not just a black blob with maybe the clear plastic. So they opt for neon accents. In the case of the EG Gundam, it's pretty natural to do, which we will take a closer look later. I will be rating this kit based on saga, style, action, gimmick, and absence. Style is how much does the Gunpla resemble its counterparts in the anime, manga, games, or other media. This is the EG Gundam. It is pretty much a very refined version that balances the anime look, especially in dynamic poses, as well as static proportions, to a more modern sensibilities instead of the late 70s, 80s. And with the neon accent on black, I would have to say it is pretty cool. The eyes are not as reflective as it would be or could be from top down like source, but it is slightly better if we are not having lights coming from the side, kind of, or rather if if we are shooting this video sideways so that the lights are not kind of making shadows in weird places. Unfortunately, the top lens is part of the transceiver in the middle of the V antenna, so no color separation for that, or no coloring for it. The original EG have it as red, just like the transceiver, but you can see the difference. So part of the quirk of being the first EG, the color separation isn't as great as Bandai did later. But yeah, otherwise, Neon Blue or Cyan accent is really great. Just like other Ecopla, kinda hard to see the scopes on it. If anything, the somewhat non-ideal part separations and mold lines are more visible. But if you just focus on the top half, this is very cool. A consequences of coloring the blocks on the skirt is that the hip of EG Gundam here is also cyan, so it does have a much more consistent color through, unlike the EG Gundam where you got a block of yellow on the waist for some reason. To some degree, this is a style win. Now back to the head. The helmet is one piece, although the mold line is not that much better from a two-piece on the older HG. And then the antenna and the transceiver and the lens is one additional piece, so it does stand out instead of just a sculpt going down, and it is easier to paint it if you want to. The eyes is separate parts. The chin transceiver is actually a separate piece too, but it is just black in this case, so you can't really tell the difference, but even in black you can see it is pretty crisp. Collar, the same blue, really stands out. And then the chest vents. We actually have a segment for top and lower belly, and then kind of mid section as well. The skirt color separation for the V, that is a big feature on the EG. We are keeping that. And then the skirts, I cut it in the middle as I usually did. Otherwise, just single pieces, static piece for the back. And then the thigh, it's just front back. The lower leg, the knee is a separate piece, but then we got a left-right clamshell shin, which is kind of unfortunate. But otherwise is, workable. It's easy to work with. Just like the hard plastic joints, easy to paint over. And then we have the feet. Pretty standard for the legs, lower half, top half. Kind of hard to distinguish with all the black around. They could be really impressive deep scopes, but no, just separate pieces. And then a single piece ankle guard. Bottom of the feet, as detailed as usual. And yeah, tip of the shoe is like the Beyond Global. So it actually kind of looks like some features from the front. Backpack, single piece backpack. You can see the thrusters are not quite as conical as the HG ones, but otherwise it looks pretty good. Separate beam saber hilts, and probably the most impressive are the arms on the EG Gundam. The shoulder armor is a single block that just goes down onto the shoulder joint. I mean, it's the same for the GM I just showed you, but there's some minor improvements here and there that makes this much easier for painting and working to get rid of the mold lines. Otherwise, yeah, just standard shoulder block, one piece bicep, and then the covering for the joint. I do like how this indexing tab works kind of like a detail. That's cool on the EG Gundam. And yeah, it is a clamshell forearm, but the separation is a lot more natural than some of the newer entries, which is odd. And then just a single piece fist at the end, which is fine for HG for the most part. So yeah, style wise, it is just a good small scale RX-78-2, being all black and green, because it is Ecopla recycled plastic with some neon accents. You probably see a few of the injection ports here and there on this thing. It's weird to get rid of them. I will say it is easier to clean them up than the standard version, probably even compared to GM here. I will say the knobs are easier to clean up, and easier to make them look natural compared to the original EG with a lot of white, which would cover up, well, it's not super white, but a very light color, which the injection ports will blend in very easily. This does not have that luxury. You have to fix it. But I have to say the neon color is cool. Black is always cool. Let's just give it an S for style. Next is action. Action isn't just the number of articulations, but how useful those articulations are. Let's jump straight in on EG Gundam. The head is practically the forever double ball joint of HG, but made in a hard plastic. Good thing is you can restore tension easily. You will hear that a lot when I talk about hard plastic joints. Polycaps are great when they are fresh and new for the first couple of years especially, and especially for newer models where they don't use the polycaps for load bearing as much. But in general, with the hard plastic joints, you can always add basically traction extras between them to restore the friction. So, and most notably PVA glue. You can just water down some PVA glue and just drop it in to the joint and let it set overnight. It would be fine for quite a while. So to me, yes, they would worn out faster, sooner, but it's something you can maintain. Anyways, impressive. Well, not impressive. Pretty standard head movement for modern day, but impressive back when the EG was released. Chest is pretty impressive, I have to say. There's a segment for the lower belly or lower abdomen, and then there's one for the upper abdomen. It's a ball joint on the lower abdomen and then another ball joint going into the cockpit. So you can do crazy crunch like this. There's actually another joint, as you can see, the blue part inside for the midsection, but it is kind of tight. Either way, very impressive for something so simple. This system actually grandfathered the Witch from Mercury system. So, gram being grams. Skirts, like I said, I cut them in the middle so that they are independent. And then the side skirt is also on a ball joint of their own. Back skirt is static as usual. The leg, we don't have the standard double peg, semi-standard double peg of HG. We just have a old ball joint. It is pretty generous though. This is 60 upward to 75° on the side. So pretty impressive side kick. And then move to the front all the way. Knee is a double knee. Kind of hard to see, but there are some hollow in there, but they also looks like they are structured. So that is cool. Down to the foot, it is a hinge, a C-clip, and then a ball joint for the knee armor, and then a ball joint for the toe. You can see ball joint goes in here, and then this ball joint, harder to see, but there's the reflection. And yeah, the arms, very high shoulder movement. That is one of the highlights of this kit, how high the shoulder can go. Bicep movement for the arm, as usual. Single joint on the elbow, but it is a very generous 135° up. Kind of standard today, but for a decade ago, something as simple as this, doing as much action, pretty much unheard of, especially for the price. But we are going to talk about that in absence. Now for the main events. Can this Ecopla EG Gundam Kung Fu fight? Let's try this pose first. Not as easy as I thought, but yeah, nope. Super easy, barely an inconvenient. Yeah, a kicking pose that actually can support the whole Gundam. That is pretty impressive, even for today. I think we have to give the EG Gundam an S for action. Next is Gimmick. Gimmick are the onboard weapons, optional weapons, and other functionality of the Gundam or mobile suits. We do have the Falcon guns on the head, and we do have separate beam saber hilt with a slot for standard beam saber blade. We do have a beam rifle, no color separation or sticker for the optic, sadly, but this optic is movable. And it just go on to Gundam's hand, super easy. To an extent, I will say this Gundam beam rifle sculpt is better than some of the modern HGs, which isn't a lot, but yeah, for how simple it is, how little you have to work with it, this is a effective mold. If you want something simple and effective, just make it super nice when it is done. If you want something that is technical, then you have to throw in the parts to make it look good. You can try to be super technical about the weapon and then also try to make it super simple. That's just not how modeling works. So in general, injection models work. Like sure, real world firearm you can make very simple pieces that lock into each other quite cleverly, but you can't do that on a clamshell. If you are doing a clamshell, make it simple, make it dumb, like this beam rifle. That's why it looks good. Then we have the Gundam shield with the neon blue cross, which really stands out. And we do have the option of holding the shield with a handle, but who does that? Everybody knows you hold the shield with the strap. And here is Gundam ready for launch. You can peg it to the back as usual. Let's do that. I never noticed the handlebar actually interfere with the thrusters. Front grip can't move, so it would be slightly difficult to do the classic Gundam aim and shoot pose, but it's mostly there. So yeah, gimmick wise, because you don't get beam saber blades, you don't get a suggestion of the core fighter, you don't get the Hyper Bazooka or Hyper Hammer as your other weapon options. So I have to give it a B for gimmick. Slightly below standard. You know, maybe with a beam saber like the Beyond Global. Beyond Global have a few things going on for it. I mean, Ecopla himself is a gimmick of this kit, but I don't think it contribute to the style already. So no double scoring on gimmick. Last and not least is absence. Like I've said, this kit, like the GM, is being sold at the same MSRP as the standard color version. Just that it's mostly limited to Gundam events or Gundam base. And before I forget, we do have this cool recirculation stickers for you to put on Gundam. One on the chest, one on the thigh, and then one on the shield. But I am going to keep this, semi in universe. So I am not putting them on, but they are cool stickers. They match the color of the plastic, so that's cool. I generally like Ecopla. Black is easy, but I do think instead of, trying to convince people to get a pretty much all black version of the kit, yeah, the beam javelin is from someone else. Instead of trying to do this, it's much more reasonable to put in a little bit of new plastic to sell all of your Ecopla. And Ecopla powers a aesthetic is a thing, I think. But yeah, just like when I talk about Blue 9 Gundam, the Bio Gundam one, where they have the Bio Gundam Mark II armor in Ecopla, the supply is, kind of sporty. So for a more general standard, all over the place release like the EG Gundam, you're looking to have a limited release for events and Gundam base only. I do think this makes a very good souvenir, just like the GM over there for the Gundam events, or when you go to Gundam base, or when you go for treasure hunting in second-hand stores. It's a good option. Seeking it out normally just for the black coloring may be ridiculous. Seeking it out trying to support recycling, probably not the most efficient or green conscious options either. But yeah, otherwise, very good option for another RX-78-2 in your collection. So the verdict for the EG RX-78-2 Gundam recirculation color is S for style, S for action, B for gimmick, and S for absence. Overall, like I said, if you need another RX-78, but maybe not another one in standard color, this is a good option. If you want to support the Ecopla concept, this is a good option. If you just want the neon and black aesthetics, maybe do the paint job yourself. But if you come across one and it's not being so at unreasonable price, go get one. Thanks for watching. See you next time.